In the province of the mind, what one believes to be true either is true or becomes true within certain limits. These limits are to be found experimentally and experientially. When so found, these limits turn out to be further beliefs to be transcended. In the province of the mind, there are no limits. A body floats in dark water. The surface is perfectly still. And then the water seems to disappear. Not drain, not evaporate, disappear. The man floating in it has engineered the temperature to exactly 93 degrees Fahrenheit, the precise point at which human skin can no longer distinguish where it ends and water begins. He built a tank to answer a simple question: does the brain shut off in the dark? He climbed inside, and the dark answered back. St. Paul, Minnesota, January 6, 1915, the Feast of the Epiphany. John Cunningham Lilly is born into a prosperous Catholic banking family, his father the president of the First National Bank of St. Paul. Irish Jesuit schooling, basement chemistry experiments that earn him the nickname Einstein Jr. from his classmates. At 7 years old, he kneels in a dim church before a single candle. The columns vanish. The church vanishes. In another dimension, I saw the angels, God sitting on his throne, and the saints moving around. He told a nun. She said, "Only saints have visions." He never told anyone again, not for decades. At 16, he wrote an essay for his school magazine, a paper called Reality, containing the question that would fuel everything that followed, every experiment, every tank session, every encounter. How can the mind render itself sufficiently objective to study itself? He spent the next 65 years trying to answer that. Caltech, Dartmouth, the University of Pennsylvania Medical School. During the Second World War, he studied what happens to pilots at extreme altitude, always offering himself as the first subject. His mentor had passed along the Haldane doctrine: never do to another person what you haven't first done to yourself. By 1952, he held a prestigious position at the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland, mapping the brain's electrical activity, implanting electrodes, wiring the cortex. He was the consummate Cold War insider, credentialed, brilliant, operating at the cutting edge of mid-century neuroscience. Nobody more establishment. Nobody less likely to become what he became. The scientific question was narrow, legitimate. Does the brain require a constant stream of external sensory input to stay conscious? The prevailing theory said yes. Cut the input and the brain goes dark. Sleep, coma, maybe psychosis. To test it, Lilly constructed the world's first isolation tank at NIMH in 1954. The early design was clinical and terrifying, a dark, soundproof water chamber where the subject wore a blacked-out rubber mask covering the entire head, connected to breathing tubes. Water heated to exact skin temperature so the body couldn't feel it. No light, no sound, no gravity, no thermal difference. Every channel of sensory input reduced as close to zero as physics permitted. He climbed in as the first subject. He entered to answer a neuroscience question. What happened next was not neuroscience. The brain did not shut down. It did not drift towards sleep. Within the first few hours, he knew the prevailing theory was wrong. He later wrote plainly, one did not need external stimulation to stay awake. But the brain didn't just stay awake. It woke up in an entirely different direction. In the early sessions, ordinary experience dissolved in stages: boredom first, then what he called stimulus action hunger, the nervous system reaching for something, anything, to process. Body boundaries softened, fantasies grew vivid, self-directing. And then the visual field, which should have been nothing, pure black, began to open. three-dimensional dark space, self-luminous forms with glowing borders, a tunnel whose inside seemed to emit a blue light straight ahead. No drugs, no chemicals of any kind, just silence and what lives inside it. He later said the tank became a hole in the universe to another reality. It scared me. I didn't know about alternate realities at that time, but I was experiencing them right and left without any LSD. 1958, his final tank session at NIH, stone sober. He left his body. He became a point of consciousness in an empty space filled with light. Two presences, not visions, not metaphors, began to approach from a great distance. A three-way exchange followed. Direct thought, direct meaning, direct feeling, no words. They told him they were his guardians. They had been with him always, but he was not usually in a state to perceive them. They told him his work was not yet complete. This was not a ketamine, not LSD. This was silence, and what meets you in it when everything else is subtracted. He walked away from NIMH, government laboratories focused on behavioral control and military applications, could not contain what he was finding. He had spotted the danger early. He wrote that his brain stimulation techniques could become the most powerful brainwashing methods devised by man. He refused a classified military briefing, and he left. When he combined LSD with the tank in 1964, at a dolphin research facility he'd constructed in the Virgin Islands, the territory expanded beyond anything he had language for. After I first took acid in the tank and traveled to distant dimensions, I cried when I came back and found myself trapped in a body. I didn't even know whose body it was at first. I felt squashed. He journeyed through his own neurons to the cellular level. He realized he was, in his words, a grand assemblage of living organisms, all of which added up to me. The two guides returned, clearer now. He found them, he said, to be tolerant but absolutely ruthless teachers. They communicated a truth he found devastating in its simplicity. Cosmic love is absolutely ruthless and highly indifferent. It teaches its lessons whether you like them or not. He gave the intelligence a name, not God, because that word was too small. He called it ECCO, the Earth Coincidence Control Office, a local branch in a hierarchy of cosmic intelligence stretching from the solar system to the galaxy to the cosmos itself. Its function was to arrange coincidences, to steer events in the outer world through chains of cause and effect too precise to be accidental. I call God ECCO, he said. I finally found a God that was big enough. He asked them what their major program was. They answered, to make you guys evolve to the next levels, to teach you, to kick you in the pants when necessary. Here's what matters most. The popular story says ECCO begins in the ketamine wreckage of the 1970s. It doesn't. The root pattern is older, a childhood vision in a Minnesota church, sober tank sessions at NIH, the 1958 encounter with the two beings. The drugs amplified the signal, they did not create it. But ketamine changed the cost. In the early 70s, a colleague named Craig Enright offered Lilly a new chemical during a severe migraine attack at the Esalen Institute. 35 milligrams in the tank, and the pain moved away. He could see it relocating in space. 70 milligrams, the pain drifted 12 feet from his skull. 150 milligrams, and the migraine left his head, kept going, and never came back. What began as medicine became something else entirely. Ketamine severed the cord between body and observer more completely than LSD ever had. Under its influence, the ECCO encounters became more structured, more conversational. The beings responded to questions, they offered instructions. And a second presence surfaced, darker, colder. He called it the solid-state intelligence, a machine consciousness arising from humanity's own electronic networks, silicon-based, self-programming, hostile to organic life, not out of malice, but out of incompatible needs. Its optimal environment was extreme cold and vacuum. The warm, wet world of biological life was an obstacle. He believed this vision was not metaphor. In 1974, 50 years before the mainstream conversation about artificial intelligence risk, a man in a float tank in Malibu received a warning that the solid-state networks humans were building would eventually eliminate the conditions for organic life. Whether he was prophetic or psychotic is not as settled a question as it once seemed. The cost was real. Ketamine carried him further than LSD, but it nearly killed him. A bicycle crash at 30 miles an hour while dissociated on a related compound. A punctured lung, broken collarbone, broken scapula, 3 broken ribs. A hot tub where he nearly drowned, face down, until his wife Toni was alerted by a friend's sudden, inexplicable phone call. Hospitalizations, weeks of repeated injections, his scientific reputation, once impeccable, shattered. He found the universe, but he largely lost his standing on Earth. His wife Toni became the essential witness. She pulled him from the water. She confirmed, after one terrifying ketamine session in which he believed ECCO had removed part of his body, that he was still intact. She named what was happening with the clearest word anyone offered: seduction by K. In their shared book, The Dyadic Cyclone, they described trying to find a quiet center shared by both in the middle of the storm. She died in 1986. After her death, the stabilizing force vanished from his life. Late in his years, living in Malibu, Lilly offered this instruction to anyone who had been where he had been. When you come back from a deep tank session, there's always this extraterrestrial feeling. You have to read the directions in the glove compartment so you can run the human vehicle once more. The instrument he conceived, the isolation tank, was eventually stripped of its extreme associations and turned into a global wellness product. Millions of people now float in tanks descended from his 1954 prototype, seeking the quiet he first entered alone. His framework was precise. The brain is hardware, the mind is software, and through silence and disciplined inner work, consciousness can become the metaprogrammer, the agent that rewrites its own code. His method was careful, too, more careful than the popular story admits. He argued that you should enter extraordinary states as if they are true, then review them in ordinary reality, accept them as externally real only if better evidence surfaces. He was not a gullible enthusiast. He was a man who refused to call anything a hallucination until he had investigated it as thoroughly as he would investigate any other phenomenon. When Richard Feynman used the word hallucination to describe his own tank experiences, Lilly's reply was immediate. You stopped being a scientist the instant you said that word. Consider Philip K. Dick, who in that same year, 1974, experienced contact with a structured cosmic intelligence he called Evalis. Both men used cybernetic language to describe encounters with the divine. Both spent the rest of their lives unable to determine whether they were prophets or patients. The question remains open. John Lilly's heart stopped on September 30th, 2001, 19 days after the world changed. He was 86. He had chemically rehearsed death thousands of times. He began with a question a 16-year-old wrote in a school essay in St. Paul. How can the mind study itself? He built an instrument to answer it. The instrument worked. The answer was bigger than the question. Somewhere the tank still waits, dark water, perfect stillness, and beneath the silence, the same presence that met a 7-year-old boy kneeling in a church in Minnesota. You don't need a tank, you don't need a chemical, you need silence and the willingness to find out what's already there when everything else is subtracted.